when you're a consultant and you're coming in, what do the main workflows look like for you? So we're going to give you the tools to just get up and running in part 3, which, should take you like 5 minutes. And then we're just going to cover the submittal and RFI workflows. Obviously, everyone knows those are the main documents that you get on a project. So we're going to focus on those ones today, but we'll be holding more webinars in the future so that, you can get involved in change flows, quote reviews, everything else that part 3 has to offer in terms of CA workflows. But today we'll focus on submittals and RFIs because those are everyone's favorite. And I don't think I've ever heard of a project that didn't contain them. If you've ever come across that, super interested to talk to you. So as a prime consultant on this call, we want to arm you with all of that information. When you have a consultant and you've invited them into part 3, we just want to show you the benefits so you can share with them why come into part 3. You're introducing them to a new software, but what does this mean for them? And if you're a consultant that's come into part 3, why should you work in part 3 and how will that actually help you? So make sure that you drop your questions along the way in the chat, and we're going to save 15 minutes at the end of this so that we can go through those questions and comments and just answer anything that we can. If we don't have a chance to get to everything, I promise we'll follow up afterwards and answer any of those questions. So first of all, some of the benefits of part 3, obviously, I'm very biased in my opinions, but I think that we just really want to highlight for you guys, what you might be experiencing now and what you can kind of show your consultants in terms of tasks and tracking. Again, as a CA working for an architect, you might have 1 or 2 projects, but your consultants might be juggling a lot more projects. And so it's how do you stay at the top of their mind? How can you make sure that they're responding to things? I myself was one of those people being like, hey, Matt, can I please have that? Can I please have that? And it's really hard to keep track of everything that you have to do on every single project. So I definitely feel your pain with that. And we really just want part 3 to be the source of truth. So where everything stands, all of your tasks are automated. We're trying to do all that heavy lifting and reduce all those manual things that you would normally have to do. And I just want to comment as well. So even in the Q&A session, you're dropping your comments and questions. As a consultant, I would really love to know your experience of coming into part 3. What were some of the blockers that you experienced? Did you feel like, you should have got a kickoff call? Like any thoughts that you have about how we could improve that? And if you're a prime consultant and you've invited anyone into part 3, and you got some, kickback or people weren't super keen on joining a new platform, I'd love to hear your comments on that. Again, we just want to make sure that every time we are improving part 3, shipping new features and enhancing things, that we're really creating what people want. I think for us, the feedback from you guys is super, super valuable. And we really want to build a product based on like real feedback from our users and from the industry. So drop those comments along the way. I'm going to jump into the demo now. So I'll go through the demo and then we'll make sure that we come back and ask any comments at the end. So as I'm going through those, just drop it and Jess will keep track of all of that for us. Okay, so I assume everyone can see part 3, all good. Okay, so when you come into part 3, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is obviously the tasks. And as I mentioned, you're going to have a lot of different tasks on your projects, and it's really hard to keep track. So the idea as a consultant coming in is that this is the only page that you really need to concern yourself with. You don't need to worry about everything else that's going on in part 3. If your main goal here is just to focus on what you need to do, view this page, you can jump and click right into these documents. We really just want to streamline this. So for example, since I'm going over RFIs and shop drawings today, I'll click into a shop drawing that is assigned to me that I need to contribute to. So you can see when you come in, you'll see a cover page, and that will include your company logo if you upload that into part 3, and your disclaimer as well for your individual company. So we don't want you to assume that you come into a program and you lose your company standards, you lose your logo. You obviously have legal language that your company has for shop drawing reviews and other documents. So we make sure that you can include that and you're not just being forced to work in another way. And then you're going to see any attachments here. So all of the shop drawings will have been uploaded by your prime consultant, or they will have been uploaded by the GC, because we do give GCs that functionality to upload RFIs and submittals and quotes in part 3. We know a lot of GCs have their own tools, which is awesome, but if you don't, you can definitely leverage part 3. So when you come in, you'll see our standard annotation tools. And we have most of the basics that you would typically use on a shop drawing review. So we have our text comments, bubbles, shapes, arrows, all of that standard stuff. You can view this in full screen. If you have a shop drawing that is like really big, sometimes you'll get a curtain wall or structural steel shop drawing, and it's just too big to review here, and you really want to use Bluebeam. Bluebeam's a great tool, especially for those bigger packages. So if you're using a Bluebeam session, you might see your architect drop in this session link here, and that would pop up at the top for you. So if that's something that you guys are using internally, we're just going to surface that information. And also you can download the document. So if you download this and you mark it up outside, you can just come and drag and drop that later on when you're done yours. So, ideally everyone's commenting on this and one time, but you can also just have that flexibility to drag and drop your own document after you've reviewed it. One of the big things here as well is we really want you guys to have that collaboration and in-app experience. So I'm sure if your experience was like me, you maybe have 100 emails today, and that really sucks. You can't possibly look at all of those in one day, and things are getting lost. So you can @mention people here, and it will notify people, and you can ask a question. So I could say, can you review the dimensions? And comment, and Jess would get a notification that I asked her a question. So this is really beneficial in terms of minimizing emails, and also when you come back 6 months later and the door is being installed on site, you can recall all the conversations that you had here. And as consultants, we wanted to mimic that outside environment for you. So this comments area is only visible to consultants. So you can chat in that safety, knowing that if a GC comes in here or an owner and you didn't want to share that information with them, because sometimes that happens, then you can just keep everything here. So once you're finished your review, you can use our stamp feature. So we let you in your profile upload your own stamps, again, based on your company standards, what things look like. After this call, I'll follow up and show you how to do that. We have a lot of help resources, but this will be one of the first things that you get set up in part 3, just so that you can hit the ground running with your actual submittal reviews. So you'll just click the stamp, find a white space on the drawing to drop it, which is sometimes difficult, and then you're ready to go. So all you're going to do is set your review status. So here, I'm Prime Consultant, so I can answer on behalf of all the consultants. So I'll set my status here. I'll say this is reviewed as noted, and I'll submit my review. So I get a date and time stamp of when I submitted my review. My review status goes on the cover page, as well as any comments. So as you're updating your comments, you can just set your status. Everything will show up here on the cover page for you. And again, just for this example, I'll upload the structural review. So electrical. So even though electrical said it's reviewed, part 3 will take the worst case scenario in a sense of this is overall reviewed as noted. After everyone's completed their review, the prime consultant on the project, so in this case, it's architectural, it's me, I act as the gatekeeper. So electrical will complete the review. You'll get notified of that. And then when you're coming in and you're happy with all the comments, you can return the file. So your architect will do this step for you, or the prime consultant, and they can select what they want to send back. So if you have a few different versions that have been uploaded, they can select which version that they want to send back. And then they're going to return that. It's going to go to the distribution list, which they'll have set up. And then, of course, you could go through the flow. If this was revise and resubmit, your GC will send you a new version. You can go through revise, you can download it, and you can reopen the document too. So the architect has the ability to reopen this. So if you, let's say, mention them and you're saying, oh, actually, I forgot to include this dimension, or I wanted to include that comment, they can reopen the document for you and you can revise your review and resend it. So you can still use the chat functionality even after a document's been issued. So that's kind of, a quick overview of what submittals look like in part 3 in a standard part 3 project that's not connected to Procore. I'll go over RFIs now, and then I'll show you a little preview of what it looks like for Procore connected projects. We have a lot of users that have a Procore connection, which is awesome because then you don't need to go into Procore. You can just work in part 3. So I'll finish going through this standard flow, and then I'll make sure that we jump into that and show you. So now you can see I completed that task. I contributed to it. It's off my list of my to-dos. And now I'll jump into this RFI. So I need to contribute to this one. I can see that there's a question here, and I can also see that there's an attachment. If you don't see the question here, just open up the attachment. Sometimes when a general contractor sends an RFI, they usually send it as a PDF. So sometimes you won't see the question, just depends on how the RFI was uploaded. We have the same thing here, a cover page. It'll be your logo, your response as you continue to go through your review. So you can use the annotation tools here as well if you want to just mark up your comment here. So maybe I'll say refer to comments on attachment, and I'll submit my response. Again, I get the time and date stamp. If I drop this down, I can see my comments, but they'll all come in on the cover page. You have the same comments feature. So everything here at the bottom will show you the history. You can see when things are updated. We'll always keep track of all these files for you. So if you accidentally, delete this, it'll still live down here. You don't need to worry about that. And the comments, of course. So you'll see this across basically every workflow in part 3, just to make sure that we're actually, giving you that continuity. Once you learn one flow, we like to think that it's intuitive and you can pick up another flow. So this is very similar to submittals. You can see the due dates on the side here, and that's important too. If a due date is set, your architect typically sets that up based on the contractual review periods. And they can also set up reminder schedules. So I know that reminder schedules can be good and bad. So we don't want to overwhelm you with emails, but your prime consultant has the ability to send you those nudges and reminders because you have so many things that you're juggling on your plate. It's just important to get those email reminders sometimes. So
Jess,
oh, sorry.
Hi. We have a question that's come in that I think is relevant to maybe this screen that you're showing is, does the GC interface look the same as it would the prime consultant, and what those differences may be?
Yeah, definitely. So a GC will only see what they've uploaded here. They don't see any of the comments. For them, when they come in, it will just see these blue under review marks. So all of this is kind of hidden for a GC. They'll see that the RFI is there, that it exists. They won't see any comments until you're ready to formally return the document. We still try and mimic that environment of, imagine you were working off of like your own server or your own process. A GC couldn't come in and see that. So we do have different permissions based on if you're a GC, if you're a subcontractor, any of that stuff. As long as it's in process with the consultants, they don't see anything. So again, when you return it, you get to pick which document you want to send back. The architect will be doing this. And same thing, you have a few different options. You can reopen it or you can price it. Obviously, we don't want to encourage pricing on an RFI, but it's there should that result in a price. So that is kind of the basic flow. One other thing to mention here is we have this revise button. So if you're a general contractor on this call and you get a response from the consultants, but you need more information, you could say missing dimensions on page 3, and then you can pick who you want to notify. So maybe I want to notify this prime consultant and I'll request a revision. Similarly, if you're the consultant and the prime consultant, you can request a revision. Maybe you can say the question's unclear. I need more information before I can actually respond to this. So again, you can keep this back and forth in part 3. Super handy when you're on site, when you revisit this question 4 months later and you need to figure out what happened, what exactly was this conversation, instead of digging through a bunch of emails, thinking like, oh, I talked about concrete at this column. That would be a very hard thing to search in your email. So you can come back here. When you're at the actual logs view, well, we have the tasks at the overview page. You can just filter on my tasks. Like, I don't want to see anything else. Look, I completed all my tasks. That's great. So I'm just going to focus on what I need to do. If I'm interested in, I want to see what electrical tasks there are, and maybe I also want to see which electrical tasks are with Caesar, then I can apply all these filters. So, you can use these filters to just narrow down your search. Don't muddy the waters with anything else. Just figure out what you need to do. And same with at the submittals page. You can just view your tasks. Typically, anything that's blue will be a task that's associated with you that you need to contribute to. So that is the standard flow for what you'll see for submittals and RFIs. All of this lives at the logs view. And again, just keeping an eye on your overview page for all the tasks that you need to contribute to. Once you've contributed to them, you're done, it's disappeared, and you've done your job. I'll jump in quickly to show you what this looks like if you're on Procore. So part 3 will look exactly the same. There'll be a few differences. We have a status, and this is mimicking what Procore does. So when Procore and part 3 are connected, we're letting the GC stay in the environment that they want to work in, and we're letting part 3 contributors and consultants work in an environment that benefits them. So you don't need to go into Procore anymore. All this information syncs for you. So here I've filtered down to my tasks. I just want to see what I need to contribute to. So there's a few different nuances here. I can see that there's a ball in court. So this is something that's different when you're in a Procore connected project. If you see your name in the ball in court, then you'll have the option to return this. But you can see here that Dwight invited me as a collaborator. That means that I'm going to go into this section, step 1, where I've been invited to contribute. So if you're a consultant and the GC hasn't specifically called you out to contribute something in your individual step, you might be contributing under your architect step. So I could say landscape reviewed as noted, see comments attached. And you can also select which document you want to review, or you can just drag and drop additional documents. So if you wanted to include, a cut sheet or a picture, anything like that, you could do that. So you just need to make sure if you're a collaborator here, you'll see your name here, and you won't see return to Procore. You'll see send to Dwight. So I'm happy with my response. I'm going to send it to Dwight, and only he will have the option to return this to Procore. Again, you've done your job. You don't need to worry about anything else. They get notified. So all you need to think about here is the step that you're included in, and it will be highlighted in this blue box. So if you don't see your name in this area, you're good. You can't action it yet. And again, that's just mimicking the flow that's been established by your general contractor. Again, we still have all the comments feature under here, letting consultants work in part 3. You're not dictated by Procore. Even if the Procore connection gets lost or, access is taken away at the end of a project, for example, everything remains in part 3. You'll always have this data. So that's one of the benefits as well. If you're a prime consultant and you're losing that data, or you think that you've lost that data, now you still have it in part 3. You have all the PDFs, all the final outputs, you're good in that sense. One thing to note here as well is if you have that return to Procore button, it'll go to returned. Again, you've done your job, only the GC can close it. So you don't have to worry about this moving down a further status. You just need to go through and return it. RFIs are a little bit different, so I'll jump into that. Again, I've narrowed this down to my tasks. I could continue to add filters if I wanted to. So for this one, there's a few people that have this ball in court option. So, there's 3 of us here, and I'll have this response button. So I can add a response. I've already added one, so maybe I need to edit it, or maybe I need to delete it. In another scenario where you're not ball and court, so for example, this one, I have a ball and court, but let's say I wanted to invite someone else to contribute. I need to bring Corey in. He wasn't included by the general contractor, but I think that he should contribute to this RFI. I need his opinion on something. Now he has the ability to come in and add a response. So if you're a consultant, this is likely what you'll see in part 3. You'll see that you can add a response, but you won't have this return to Procore button, and you can only return to Procore if you enter a response. So if there's nothing there, we don't let you return it because obviously there's nothing there. There's nothing to send back. But if you're a person here, you add your response, you won't have the return to Procore option because it's not your ball and court. But your prime would be notified that you added your response. And again, your job is done. You've completed your task. So RFIs and submittals look slightly different in part 3, and that's because we're just mimicking what Procore does. So those steps are dictated, but we allow the prime consultant flexibility in terms of adding people, removing people from the step, and letting you guys really collaborate. One thing before we jump into any Q&A, I just want to highlight here the question mark in the bottom right corner. This is so you can reach out to us in support anytime. So if you wanted to learn about Procore, you could type in Procore here. If you're a consultant and you want to know about part 3, we have a welcome to part 3 for consultants, how you can get started as a consultant and a collaborator, what it looks like if you're issuing changes and everything like that. Or you can just use this question to ask us about, use this ask to, reach out to support at part 3. This helps us. It's better than emailing because we can see where you are in the app. So we know, okay, Jeff is on this RFI and he has a question. It just helps us jump in a little bit quicker and help you troubleshoot, answer your question, anything you need to do. So always using this help beacon down here is really helpful for us, and it gives us a head start. The entire team will see it as well. So Jess and me, both Jesses, our team will see this and everyone will be there. It really surfaces it for everybody. So that is our general run through of everything. So tasks, submittals, RFIs. I will follow up with a document afterwards about, getting your account set up. But once you've come into part 3, verified your account, you can go in here to your account settings, write your title, add your stamps. This is where you'll authorize your Procore connection. And this is just really saying, hi, Procore, me, Jeff, I can send back responses. That's it. That's all you need to worry about. And you can also set your email preferences here. We like to encourage people, leave it unassigned to me. You can also say, don't bother me at all. So you have a few different options here. I'll follow up with all that information afterwards as well. Okay, Jess, I'll hand it over to you to kind of let me know if there's any questions.
Yes, and before we get into questions, we do have Matt who loves the Dwight shout out in this presentation. So thank you for catching on to that. But we have Michael who's asking, we currently have prime consultant and architectural separated in part 3. Is there any way we should revise this as an organization, or is this done on a project by project basis?
So the permissions are set at the project level. But if your organization is currently architectural prime, then that is kind of the default that you will come into here. So for example, at the org level, part 3 is architectural. I could revise that here at the project level if I wanted to, but part 3 will always have that prime consultant role. So if you're an engineer, for example, who we have quite a few in part 3, maybe your discipline is mechanical and electrical. So in that case, you could revise that. Architectural is our standard, but you could revise it at a project by project level.
Awesome. And then one last question here is from Emma wanting to know, is there a welcome to part 3 orientation or walkthrough for GCs?
So we have some welcome information in terms of the functionality that they have. But I think that's a great idea. We could definitely host a webinar on that. And I think the reason that we want to introduce these webinars is because we're really, we're aware that when people buy part 3 as a prime consultant, we're giving them an onboarding, and you as a GC or a consultant are likely feeling like, what the heck is this? Why do I have to do this now? And what does it mean for me? So I think that's a really good idea for a next webinar. So we can kind of narrow down from like an individual perspective of what that looks like for you, your functionality, and also the benefits for you.
Awesome. That's all the questions that we have. I think we can still open it up since we have a little bit of time if anyone wants to comment on any of their experiences with consultants or collaborators, bring them into part 3, or maybe you are one yourself, or you can drop it in the chat. There's still a few minutes here. Now we're shy today. Can we use this video to train our consultants?
Yes. So we can definitely pass this on. We've recorded it, and I'll send a few little keynotes afterwards because we know everyone that signed up. So yeah, I'll send a few little links afterwards, and we can send this video as well. I'm sure anyone who knows me, if you've interacted with me, I love a Loom video. So I will probably put something together. I don't know if people like my videos, but I like making them. I think that they're helpful. So yeah, I'll put something together and include that in the email. And I'll also throw it into our help center. So we have our own dedicated area for consultants and collaborators. So I'll put a link in here with a video, and hopefully this can be somewhere where this will live all the time, and a good link for inviting your consultants into part 3.
Awesome. And then we have a few more coming in now. We've got Sean who's asking, in submittals, can we change the order of the columns?
In the log view?
I think that's what Sean's
likely
meaning, but yeah.
No worries. Okay, so I'll assume it's here. We can't reorder the columns right now, but we have always thought of what is actually useful for people. So we have, the date created, things like that, but it would be really great to get some feedback from you guys of, is all of this useful information to you? What other things would you like to see? For example, we've had a lot of feedback that people would like to see a ball and court column. So that's something that we're going to introduce for both Procore and non-Procore connected projects, just to figure out where the bottlenecks are and everything like that. Not to point fingers, but sometimes you just need to know what's holding things up. So that's definitely a piece of feedback that we've had.
Awesome. Yeah, Sean just specified that he would like to have the reference number first, so we can definitely put that in as a request and see what happens there. I'm just going through, we got a few more here. Is there a way to designate a person to be the default manager for RFI, submittals, pricing, etc. from the Prime's office? Currently, I believe it is just architect as the default from John.
Right. So at the team level here, we have a few different roles here. So if you are a multidisciplinary firm, I'll just go over this first and then I'll dive in a little bit more. So you have this option as the prime consultant, or you could just limit a person to that specific type of consultant. So depending on the role here, that kind of helps the functionality at the document level. If I go back into a submittal here, architectural, I can set this person as the default. So anytime an RFI or a submittal is created, I can make myself the default. I'll always be the one who's notified for that, and I'm the gatekeeper. If you are a prime consultant, you can definitely pick if you want someone else to be. We are releasing a feature in a couple of weeks to add multiple assignees. So this is something that we've heard from users for a really long time, is that if you're at a firm, say you're mechanical, it's not necessarily just going to be one person. You might have 3 people on your team who have the ability to respond to an RFI or submittal. So we're going to let you set a primary reviewer from that firm and then also add additional assignees to those documents. So that's something that's coming out in a couple of weeks that our team's been working on, because we know that's a feedback that we've had from a lot of users, is we need to add that flexibility to mimic how a real team works.
Awesome. And Andrea is saying, I've not used part 3, but on one small project thus far, but I found the submittal status confusing and some were highlighted blue and some weren't. Is there something that the GC needs to do to learn this or something I can do better? Lucky for you, Andrea, we have our product designer on this call as well. So
Andrea, do you mean, are you a general contractor or a consultant? Just to clarify.
I am a consultant. I don't have my Procore open right now, or my part 3, sorry. But I just like when I would get submittals, there would be a ton of them in there, and some of them would say open, and some of them would say, I don't even remember what the other status was, but it was hard for me to find which ones I needed to address. And that were really for me. So I would have to go through and like click on them and open them and try and see if it was for me or not. And I do think that column of adding the ball in court will help that situation, but the status just seemed confusing. And I don't know if it was just the lack of the GC not understanding what status they needed to set it to.
Right. And this is Procore connected?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
This project is, yes.
So if I go back to my Procore project here, again, anything that has my ball in court should be highlighted in blue for you. But if I'm looking at all of the tasks, probably in your scenario, I would encourage to figure out, like, I want to look at the Procore status is open, and I just want to look at what is assigned to me. So I know that these are the open submittals, and these are the ones that include my name. And then any blue ones would be an action item for you. So for example, for this one, okay, I'm coming in and I need to respond. But for another one, I've likely already responded. Then
yeah, it wasn't ever consistent on like which ones were blue. Because there were some that I needed to address that weren't in blue. And so that was confusing. And again, I don't know if that's something from how the GC is uploading them from the state. Yes, like I have pending, open, and then the returned and closed now, but that's because the project's almost over. But like when I was in the middle of it, there was another status that was very similar to open, and so I couldn't tell if like just looking in that column if I needed to address it or not. And again, the blue highlights didn't seem to be consistent, but maybe that bug has kind of been fixed or something. And again, maybe it's the connection to Procore. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, either way, after this, shoot us a message in this ask, and that way I can see what project you're working on and I can have a look for you as well. Okay. So sometimes there are those scenarios where GC will like fill the project with pending submittals, but they'll also assign consultants at the same time. And it's like, well, I don't have a submittal to review yet. They're just putting them in as placeholders. So those ones definitely get confusing where they shouldn't be. Yeah,
I don't want to see those yet.
No, exactly. That's not your responsibility. It's like, send it to me when I need to do something. Otherwise, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely get that. But yeah, shoot us a message down here and I can look into that project for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
John is asking, is there a way to change who is the ball in court for Procore projects? Currently, only the ball in the court person can return RFIs and submittals back to Procore.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a limitation of Procore and the way the GC sets it up. So one thing that a way that you can kind of get around this is like having that conversation with your GC about who they put in the ball in court. So for example, if Jess and I are both in this step, but we both have this required comment, which means the GC won't let us return something until both people have a response. So if that's a scenario that you're coming across, I would get them to remove that requirement. So either Jess or I could respond and return it. This kind of locks it in place. As Jess here has the ball in court, unfortunately, even though she's finished, I can't return it for her because it's her review. I've already completed mine. So getting them to remove that requirement is something that's helpful. But it's kind of establishing that with your GC along like hopefully at the beginning of the project to say like these are our house rules for the project and this is how we want to work. But sometimes that's a conversation because all we can do is mirror what's in Procore.
And last here is Tracy said, can we also go over quotes and COs at some point?
Yes, definitely. We'll have a webinar about quotes and really taking you through that change flow. So we'll go from, proposed change, quote, change order, like that typical flow. I'll make sure that we put that out there in the world very shortly, and also invite primes and consultants, again, giving people that flexibility to work in part 3. For consultants, we don't want to force you to work the part 3 way. We just want to help you collaborate and be in one spot. So we'll go over that. I'll make sure that I post it in the app again at that top panel to register for that one. It'll probably be in a few weeks, but definitely, and any other webinar ideas that you have would be really, really helpful for us. So we make sure that we're answering the questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Jessica.
No worries.
Awesome. That is it from the questions and comments, and we're right on time.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question or you think of something later on, just use this ask afterwards. Jess and I will both see it and we'll monitor that. And then Andrea just shoot us that message.